what does a client feeling like herself again look like? And what are them steps that you take?
Yeah. So getting back to feeling like yourself you have to have the self-awareness that you've changed. You have to know that you're not quite being yourself, which could be, for me personally, it's a bit more outgoing, bubbly. I can talk, I can focus on my work. So for me, getting back to being myself or getting my client back to being themselves, they have to have a baseline in their head about what their normal, quote unquote, feels like. So that's the first thing I would say. You have to know how far you've moved away from something to know what that starting point was. And then in terms of what would I do to help them to get back to that? For me, everything starts with a thought, Tegan. It's not very complicated. We think a lot. Human beings think a lot. And it's the first thought that then turns into another thought, which then gets attached to an emotion, which then turns into some kind of behavior or action. And sometimes it's questionable whether the emotion comes first and then the thought comes next. But, that I'm not even going to get into that argument. The thought has as a cycle, thought, emotion, and action. For me, if we're looking at it as a cycle, those three things are moving parts on it. I'd want to understand what thoughts you're having. I'd want you to also tell me what emotions you feel and what behaviours you might be doing and what actions you might be taking and possibly the consequences of that whole thing. So you have to have a very clear idea of almost what the problem looks like. So I call it the T cycle, TEA cycle. That's just a representation, really, a snapshot of what's happening. And then in order to fix it, it's almost like reverse engineering. It's kind of what would you like to feel, or what would you like to think, or what would you like to do? And if you just break that cycle and that circle at any point on there, it changes the other two moving parts. So just by changing the way that I behave, I could change the way that I think and the way that I feel. So that's where behavioral therapy comes into, or behavioral psychology, whatever you want to call it, comes into it. Basically, let's change the action or the behavior so the other parts of that cycle will change. It's also possible to break that by coming in at the thought level. So, what would you like to think is an interesting one. And because as soon as you change your thought, then it gets attached to a different feeling, and then you might end up doing something differently. So it depends on where you want to come in at. And attacking it from the point of view of changing your emotions is a little bit harder. It's easy to sit down and think, well, I actually want to feel happy or I want to feel more lively. It's a little bit harder to enact it unless you kind of then link it back to what thought goes with it. So it's very interesting about where you can start on at those 3 points. But sometimes if I'm looking at the feeling and I want to change my feeling, I just say, I want to feel okay. I just keep it very simple. And then okay is like, okay, there's not too much pressure there. Just want to feel okay. And immediately you start thinking, oh, my brain relaxes. And I think, okay, well, I want to feel okay. Perhaps I should do this, or perhaps I should think this. And that breaks that whole cycle. So I hope I've answered your question, Tegan.
You have. So breaking that cycle, instead of sort of going back into those like bad habits or whatever, like how do you keep up that sort of momentum? Or do you think it just naturally comes like when you keep doing something, like your new thing that used to be your old thing? Do you think that then just replaces the bad habits? Or like if someone's really gotten into a habit, how are you like breaking that off with like your thoughts and emotions? And how do you sustain it sort of long term?
Very, very good question, Tegan. And that is the place that everybody comes in at. We can all start things, but do we ever finish anything? And for me, there is a practice that happens. And I've got a new kind of framework that I'm working with as well called my TLC method. And it's looking at what happens when you introduce some kindness and some tender love and care into that whole process. So it's like two different systems that join up as twins and have a lovely time. But the TLC is to encourage you to keep the practices going. It's not just something that's once and done. You have to repeat it and you have to become conscious of it as often as you can. Lots of ideas around how long it takes to put a habit in place or break a habit. 30 days is put out as a standard, but obviously it could be longer. I think it could be shorter. If we're in pain and we want to change something, in that moment, we could change our thoughts and we'd feel a lot different. So for me, it's how much do you want it? Habits are hard to put in place because the other one that you had before is quite strong. So that's why the repetition happens. And even with thinking, the reason why a very loose thought can become a thing, can become a very powerful belief, is through repetition again. So the very process, we can do it negatively, brainwash ourselves in a negative way, brainwash ourselves in a positive way. But either way, the process is simple. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And habits, they kind of fall off the edge of the chains. Sometimes because we don't want it enough. For me, I have a real habit of eating lots of chocolate. Don't know about you, Tegan, and I can be very good for a couple of days. And then I stop. And it's like, whoa, Joy, why have you stopped? I mean, I thought you said you wanted to lose some weight, or I thought you wanted to not get diabetes, or I thought you said you wanted to. But the lure of the chocolate and the memory of the chocolate is so strong. And it makes me feel good in the moment. Just even thinking about it and talking to you right now, it makes me feel good. So it's like, wow, how do I break that habit? So sometimes it takes a really, dare I say, tragic event to make you realize that, yeah, that habit is just broken just like that. There's no second guessing, no questioning. I'm going to break that habit. Sometimes you have to attach it to, if you were going, let's say, exercising and you weren't like me, I'm very lazy, don't go out very much. If I really wanted to encourage myself to have that at the front of my mind, I might put my trainers at the front door. Great. So at least I would have the reminder every time I saw it. Oh, I meant to go for a walk. I meant to go for a walk. Hopefully I might put that into place and then go for a walk, or at least go for a very short walk for me and come back. So sometimes it's about associating one habit with another habit, which feels good, and sometimes rewarding yourself. I love a good reward myself personally. So that can encourage me sometimes to break old habits and start new ones. But introducing something else as a cue, as they say, something to like jog your memory is a useful way to do it. But breaking habits, it's hard. Let's not pretend about it. It's not easy. But I would remind you that whatever you're doing right now, that once was not a habit. So how did you achieve that? And it was by repetition, 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 and also it feeding the dopamine in your brain. So that's kind of the reward center is the reason why human beings go back to doing things again. It's all about motivation. And it's there for a reason. That hormone is there for a reason. If we didn't get that kind of sensation of pleasure from eating, we'd starve to death. So you do have to have, if food's put in front of you, you've got to have a kind of memory of, that made me feel good the last time I ate that, so that the motivation is there. So there's a lot of ideas around that, Tegan, but I hope I've answered some of it.
You have, definitely. Do you know how you've identified some motivators? Because I think it can be quite hard to reward yourself with things that you actually enjoy if you're not intentionally trying to find them. Do you know if you're like, okay, what brings you joy? And you can maybe list like 3 or 4 things, but actually to serve that as a reward, I found that so hard. Have you ever read Chimp Paradox?
I've read most of it, yes.
And so when I was trying to think about my monkey's bananas, so my chimp's bananas, I was thinking, I was I was stuck. I was like, I'm not really too sure. Is it like something comforting? Is it like going out? Like I tried different things and I'd never really, even now, haven't found like a true process of how to reward myself on like a consistent level. Like, oh, that's my go-to, you
I
know?
know what you mean, Tegan, and it almost taps into, for me, the reason why I came up with the TLC method. So kindness was a way that I broke, let's say, a very depressed place that I found myself in, because in business things go well, things go wrong, and if things go wrong often enough, you can't get the energy to be happy again. So you're quite right. How am I going to reward myself once I'm in that place? And I realized that the thing that broke it was kindness. So I did a course which helped me to like look at my future self, which is an interesting concept, my future self. But I did actually start feeling better once I got familiar with this future person. So this future Tegan, this future Joy. because the theory around it is that we don't have enough of a relationship with that future person to care about them enough. So let's make Tegan care about Tegan version 2.0, or let's make Joy care enough about Joy 2.0. And I found that being kind to myself and allowing myself permission to be nice to myself in whatever way that might be. It might be just walking away from my desk for three seconds, or perhaps just going for a slight walk. You know, I don't walk a lot. Someone might say, let me have a walk. We deny ourselves so many simple things. So it's not actually something complicated that you need to give yourself. And you're quite right. There's only so many doggy treats that I can give myself, you know, as a reward. You have to almost sort of combine it with how much you want the outcome. So whatever you're trying to strive for in life, how much do you want it? That's got to be there as well, because I'm not going to get motivated about certain business tasks. Seriously, I don't like filing. I don't think there's much that you can do to motivate me, apart from sometimes I say to myself, I can watch a television program at the end of it, or Joy, your desk is going to look so much better once you put that pile of paper away. So it's more of a challenge. Okay, can you actually make your desk look better, Joy? I bet you can't make your desk look better. So it's very simple, silly little things that you do, but you're internally challenging yourself. You're right about the rewards. For me, the rewards are very small. They tend to be things like I might be able to have a bit of cake with my tea, you know, or I might be able to, as I said, watch a bit of television or do a little bit of crocheting if I feel like it, if I feel like doing that. So the rewards are not complicated. You have to find something that you feel is rewarding. And TV can be rewarding for me because I don't give myself enough breaks. So all I'm doing with the kindness and the tenderness and the love and the care is extending what I give to other people, which I'm nice to them and I encourage them to do things, and you support people. You know, my little 5-year-old just needs a little bit of like, well done, Joy. You put that bit of paper away. Aren't you amazing? You know, and that feeling, even as I'm talking about it, I'm sort of reverting back to my 5-year-old. She's thinking, yeah, I like the sound of that. So it's nothing complicated, Tegan. I think what we're doing is making this too complicated. And like, what's the reward going to be if it's a reward system I want to tap into? There's also the opposite, which is the punishment system. So it's either a reward or it's a punishment. So carrot or stick. We're kind of looking at that. Am I motivated by both? Sometimes it's what's going to happen, Joy, if you don't do that. So if it's the piles of paper that I have around me, what's going to happen, Joy, once you're buried underneath all of it and you can't find the things that you need? Your business is going to fall apart anyway. So I print bits of paper off. Some people prefer to have it on their computers. They're probably wondering, what does she mean by piles of paper? I don't have piles of paper. But I also store things on my computer. So obviously it's out of sight, out of mind. But I can't find things that way. I don't rifle through my files, but I can rifle through paper if I've filed them in a certain order and categories. And it's a quick way of doing it. And I read lots of books. So I'm a paper person, Tegan. So I hope that's answered that. I might have rambled on a bit there.
No, I like the rambling, and it wasn't rambling, sorry, but I liked how you used then like the punishment side of things as well. I thought that was really interesting.
Yes, reward and punishment, two sides of the same coin. And human beings are they fall into line very easily through a punishment system. You know, if you don't get this done, Joy, then blah, 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 blah. You know, it reminds us of all the caregivers in our life, parents, you know, teachers, bosses. You know, there's like, oh my God, if I don't get this done, then. So you can actually be motivated to get something done by the punishment idea. I don't know if that's the best way to approach life, but sometimes I use that on myself if the reward system doesn't work, because it kind of balances it out. Well, what are you going to lose then, Joy, if you don't do this? I hear you dragging your heels. I hear you're not wanting to do it. I hear you're not procrastinating, perhaps is the word that might come up. But if you don't do it, what are you going to lose? You know, what? So you've got to work out, I'm not doing it now because I have to. I'm doing it because the thought of what would happen if I didn't is far worse than getting it done.
Lovely. And what would your advice be if somebody is starting out a new business and so there isn't a demand there from clients, they just dislike their lifestyle right now? What would you say to them?
Well, I think having your own business is a lovely concept and it's been thrown out there in the world. It's made everyone feel that they have to do it, should
Mm,
have it. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with working for somebody else. In a way, it's a very secure position to a point. You turn up, you get paid, you leave. Whereas working for yourself, you turn up, you might not get paid. And you might never leave because you keep working longer and longer and longer hours. So if you're going to start, let's say, a particular enterprise of your own, you have to work out how much you want to do it, how much you believe in it, because you need that extra reserve when things aren't going right, like like the light that burns brightly somewhere. That flame just keeps on going, despite the external situation that, hey, I'm not doing very well. I haven't got any clients right now. I might not have any money. And I think when it comes to money, financial things are very important. Do make sure that you have something to fall back on. And it could be another skill that you have where you can definitely earn, some money to pay your rent or to pay for a new bit of equipment. Or you might have family or friends who are quite supportive of what you do. So you can fall back on that. Because the worst thing, I think, when you're running a business is that it's very easy to get depressed and very hopeless and very anxious. All of those terrible feelings of like, oh my God, this is not going well. Because from that position, you can't create anything. And that's
yeah.
a position that I found myself in 8 months ago, Tegan, where I was just like, I've had so many disappointments. Stuff has gone well, great. Then stuff doesn't go well. And when you've been hit once, it's fine. Twice, you think, I don't know how many times I've been in that position, but 10 years later, and when you start new projects and they don't go well, it can be very, very demoralizing. So for me, it was a question of, okay, how am I going to get myself back to a good place? And how much do I want to do this? Do I still want to do this? Because the idea that you have in your mind, first of all, you have to like it and believe in it. And secondly, somebody else has to as well. So that's the second part, isn't it, Tegan? We can't control that bit. But you have to be excited about what you do. That's why new inventions get created. And you have lots of people who start things that no one believed in them at the beginning. They've had to carry that energy and that self-belief. And, you watch Dragon's Den and other programs like that. So you can see the fire in the belly of the people and what they believe in. But does anybody else believe them? Are they able to sell it to anyone? And then as a business owner, you have to realistically know when to stop. Despite all these lovely, powerful phrases, Tegan, and all these lovely memes and, keep going when the going gets tough. I'm like, hang on. Somewhere in there, let's be sensible. Let's look at this whole concept of kindness and TLC, because that might not be the right answer. It might be the wrong thing to say to someone. Come on, keep going, keep going. I think there's it's a dangerous thing to say. And I think it's thrown around far too often. And I think a lot of people are floating around that are very unhappy, but have got this thing in the back of their mind, which becomes a belief about keeping going. Otherwise, I'm lazy. Otherwise, I haven't tried hard enough. Tegan, kept going. I've read her posts. I've seen her stuff on social media. She's doing all right. So why is it not working for me? I just have to keep going, just like her. So there's a lot of information out there that can make you feel really bad. So tapping into why you're doing what you're doing, how much energy you have for it. Is it something you might be happy to be talking about in 2 years' time? Well, let's make it small. Happy to be talking about it in 6 months' time. That's a mental process, and you kind of get a yes or no back intuitively. Would you be happy talking about it in a year's time? If it's still a yes, that's good going. If I said, would you be happy talking about it in 3 years' time? Sometimes the brain goes, 3 years. I think I might change by then. I might want to do something else. And I have changed my ideas over the years. Nobody stays in one place. So again, this whole idea that how does that movement take place? How do you take on board new ideas? How do you let go of them? Because there's so much information around you just saying, just keep going. But flogging a dead horse, as we say, is flogging a dead horse. If it's over, the party's over, the party's over. Move on to another one. Get your energy back, get your enthusiasm back, and try again.
And do you think just completely sort of mentally shutting it down, like closing the door, is what can like sort of re-energize you?
Do you mean like taking a break or?
No, I mean, like, let's say you were really trying to push out a new program or a new concept and it just wasn't working, and you had been doing it for like, I don't know, let's say a year. Would you then, because obviously there's always that hope, like, we might be so close, like, you know, that we might be so close. It's that, like, I call it almost like the lottery mentality where it's like, just keep doing the same
Gamblers,
numbers or whatever.
gamblers mentality, yes.
Yeah. So when you've like 8 months ago or whenever, when you kind of mentally shut your door on something, did that help? Just saying like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm taking a step back and then going in a different direction. Like, did you have to completely close it off to move on to the next thing?
I think I did close it off in that way, Tegan, because ideas are meant to be executed, aren't they? So we all have bright ideas, inventions are created because of that, and following through on them is then the next test. But how long you should stay at that is personal. I go by my emotions. I use my emotions to tell me whether it's right or wrong, and also my intuition. And because I know I'm kind of susceptible to getting depressed and getting very anxious, and I'm okay with that, I use those feelings to at least signpost me to the fact that this might not be for you anymore, Joy, simply because it's not sustainable. You can't be long-term depressed, long-term anxious, and also have a business. The two don't go together. So for me, I do shut the door on something and say, right, that idea, it's lived its life, and we do have to shut the door on that. What do you want to do now? And there is a kind of freedom within that space, because we forget that we are human beings who are always creating things, we're always changing, we'd always want something, some new bright shiny thing. There's no two ways about it. So the new bright shiny thing will at least invigorate you,
Yeah.
like it will still give you that energy. And so for me, it doesn't matter whether it's the new right thing for you. We just want to get your energy back to a decent place so that you can think straight, so you can focus, so you can talk to your friends, so you can, whatever it might be, it's now more of a movement happening than this stuckness happening. And that's why I say the phrase, keep going, and also you're quite right. I have the one about, don't give up yet. You might almost be there, Joy. Like, there's so many things that make you feel bad. It's untrue. But I
Mhm.
don't think it's useful to live with bad feelings for too long. They're just not, they take away your creativity for starters. And common sense tells me that you have an intuition inside about whether you've tried for long enough or not. And who says that you can't park it for a couple of months or even a year or 2 years, and then suddenly, you know, it comes back into your mind, bigger, stronger, better. It's been changed by all the other experiences you've had in that 2 year break when you've been doing something else. And suddenly it comes back like, this is how I'm going to do it. I feel really, this is how,
Get
I
that
don't think any,
clarity from somewhere. Like it
yeah,
just,
nothing's ever wasted, Tegan. Nothing, I mean, I've come to that conclusion that nothing's ever wasted. So even though you've parked it over here, it's parked. It's your brain. It's your ideas. Guess what? Your brain's always thinking about stuff and making connections and neural pathways being made and all broken, all kinds of stuff happening in the brain. So it is very clever at putting A plus B plus C plus Z plus R, and locking it all together in something completely new that you think, oh, why didn't I think about that 2 years ago? I just needed to speak to Tegan. That was the missing piece. Oh my God. And then you're
like,
excited. And then you're excited again.
love that. Yeah, for sure. And I've actually experienced something similar like that as well. So I really like that. When you're coaching your clients and sometimes you are in that sort of negative headspace, in terms of like advice for coaches or service providers, how do you not let your own feelings seep into your work? Do you have anything that you actively do consciously to try and separate it, if that makes
Yeah,
sense?
well, that's an interesting question, Tegan, because my first thought in response to that was if you have client and hopefully you're being paid for talking to them as well, getting your compensation for handing over this service, you should be happy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, first of all. So if those two things are in place and you're still feeling a bit out of sorts, my next question would be then what's happening in your life that's disturbing you in this moment? So there are real things outside of us in our real lives that nothing to do with the business lives that can affect us. Uh,
Mm.
for me personally, a lot of people dying. My son passed away, which was very sad. My elder sister and her niece, and then my mum and my dad. All within a very short space of time, and that changes you. So it might be impossible for me to be coaching you in the moment, Tegan, even though you're paying me thousands of pounds or dollars or whatever it was, and be in a good headspace. I mean, almost impossible to do it. So there are some times when you have to recognize it's not even possible for me to have a conversation with Tegan today. And that's just being honest with you because there's some stuff that I need to sort out before I can talk to somebody else. And that may be talking to a friend or another coach or a therapist, whoever that might be, to help you to iron out that emotional thing that's going on there. It could be anything that's happening. So I would say that it's not useful to have conversations with other human beings when you're not in a good headspace.
Mhm.
That's my first answer. The second answer would be if you are in a bad headspace, try and work out what that is so that you don't bring that kind of negativity, I suppose, into the conversation. Because human beings are very perceptive. And, the difference between me and you talking now today, and me being really like, ooh, hyper, bouncing off the walls, and me and you talking on another day, and my voice has changed, and my tone has changed, and my body language isn't doing terribly much. And you're thinking, is this the same person that I was talking to last week? You know, because you can tell. So that was a pretty obvious contrast I gave you there between me being really hyper and me being very slow. But there are other variations that human beings can pick up on because we pick up on body language and tone and everything else. And if you're intentionally trying to do some good for somebody, but you haven't got the energy in yourself, then I don't think it works out. It's not good for either of you.
Mhm.
That's my opinion.
That's the end point. It's not good for either of you. But yeah, I do think you're so right in terms of we can pick up on everything and anything. And then it's almost like you never really want your client to turn into your coach, and like hold
Wow.
space for yourself. I can remember when I was on BetterHelp and there was like numerous times where like I held space for like my therapist. And I kind of thought, like, obviously it was like it was never actually fine, but yeah.
No, it was wrong, Tegan. You were right. Your first like judgment and conclusions were quite right. Who is the person asking for the help and who is the person giving the help? So, I mean, obviously with my therapy background and also my coaching background, because the two are slightly different, the therapy background helps me to go back into the past quite safely. I feel very confident that I can ask you about your childhood. I feel very confident I can ask you about your relationship because I can hold that space for you. Whereas that's going backwards. Going forwards, where coaches are trained to operate from the present, moving into the future, okay, that's the planning and the goal setting and what do you want and what values do you have right now and what are your strengths and your weaknesses. That's a now place moving forward. The thing is that, of course, helpers can get the two perspectives very muddled up. But I personally did not want to delve into somebody's past without feeling qualified to do it. So I did a coaching course initially, and then I ended up doing the therapy training so I could have the confidence to say, Tegan, I need to talk to you about your childhood. I need to ask you this question. I want to know this. Tell me some more about this. I need to confidently know that. And then you need to confidently feel that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a lot of stuff around confidence in there and credibility, because human beings are vulnerable and we have to be careful of we have to be very careful of what places they might be in and what places I might leave you with. So I would never leave a conversation where I left you on a low point. As a therapist, I just wouldn't do it. Even though if you're not being a decent therapist, you probably think it's okay. You've been trained just to let things finish at the top of the hour. But I never want to leave anybody in a low place. I'm like, not happening, not happening. Let's get you back to a place where you can function for the rest of the week. You won't be around me. I need you to be able to find that inside of yourself. Otherwise, I don't go to people to make me feel worse. I don't pay money to people for them to make me feel worse, Tegan. No way.
Yeah, for sure. And as well, and I think it's really nice, like even going off on a little bit of a tangent, if your friend is bringing something to you that you know that you won't be able to close that conversation down safely, I feel like it's best to not even go into it and just politely say, like, I'm not equipped because I don't want you to be feeling terrible when I have to go home and we have to go our separate ways. And it's at the forefront of your mind. Because I think when you do speak something out, then I think it becomes more overwhelming, the concept of what you're talking about. Whereas when if it's sort of in your mind, it's not came through. So it's not as, not that it's not as real, but it's not as powerfully emotional, I think. Like, I
You
think you
haven't,
can hold it
you
all.
have, you have, and you haven't. It's like, to me, it's like touching a very tender spot on someone. Supposing I had I had a damaged hand or a leg, and it was really, really, tender to touch. Feelings are like that. We can't
Mm,
see them, but you're quite right. We can tap into them very quickly, very,
yeah.
very quickly. And you're right about not opening things up that you can't shut down, because you could leave me feeling terrible at the end of the session, or I could leave you feeling really terrible at the end of the session. And I'm thinking that's not even a kind thing to do to a human being.
No. Yeah. The intentions are lovely, but in theory, um, not as grand. So talking about feeling good and feeling like confident when you started your therapist course, how do you advise other people to start feeling more confident? Do you go back to the sort of concept of giving yourself evidence that you can do something, and then that's where the confidence comes? Or is there a way to sort of bypass that and gain confidence by just doing the thing?
Interesting that. I mean, for me, confidence is something which comes and goes.
Mhm.
So I use an image of a bucket of water and the tap running, but the bucket's got lots of holes in it. So it's very interesting. I turn on my confidence tap, whoosh, hey, water, and it's going into my bucket, but my bucket's got holes in it. So that's the confidence. It's always kind of seeping away. So for me, confidence is I call it a doing activity. I do something and then I feel that I've done it well, and because I've done it well, then I feel confident. So it's kind of a competence, ability, competence, confidence loop. So these two words, competence and confidence. If we imagine it as that infinity circle that goes backwards and forwards, one feeds the other. So that's why I say it's a doing activity. If I do something well, and I do it often enough, I begin to feel that I've got the capability to do this. And naturally your confidence is there. But if I don't do it often enough, I could lose that ability. Like
Yeah.
riding a bike. I can ride a bike. I could when I was younger, not so good nowadays. Why? Why? Because I don't do it that often anymore. But give me a bike, I'll be a bit wobbly, and my legs might not be up to it for the first, couple of meters. And then there's a memory that comes back in. Memory kicks in. Great. That's good news. Might be some muscle memory that kicks in. Oh, I remember this action. And then I might find that I'm actually stable and doing quite well. And I praise myself like, I think I've got it after all these years. So that's the confidence coming back. And so, it's kind of feeding this energy that's feeding on itself between the ability and then the pride and the happiness that, oh, I can still do that.
Yeah, and
So,
then
yeah.
yeah, I get that. And then you're just confident to go out on your bike whenever you want.
Yes, because exactly. Because confidence is not something that you have like a piece of cheese in the fridge. It doesn't just sit there staring at you. It's like everyone's eating the cheese for God's sake. It's not going to just sit there. But it's understanding. It's a feeling. When I have that feeling, what does it feel like? So this whole thing about awareness, and I haven't mentioned the word emotional intelligence yet, but emotional intelligence is a big umbrella term. The biggest part of it for me is awareness. You
Mm.
know, when I feel confident, what does that look like? Or what emotion do I have? Or where does it seem to happen? And you might recognize if you're beginning to track it, even in a little journal of some sort, that when I've repeated something 3 times, I feel confident. Or when Tegan comes along with me, I feel confident. Or, when I go and do some research, I feel confident. So you have to recognize what's feeding that end process yourself by becoming more aware. So the personal growth is fueled by emotional intelligence and emotional awareness.
Nice. And even like right at the beginning, what we spoke about becoming yourself again, you can't really understand what becoming yourself is if you didn't know who she was in the first place and what's changed. So I
Perfect.
think it is really, really lovely. Have you ever
Perfect.
had any because I've had also negative experiences with self-awareness in terms of being so aware and like so aware of like how other people were like speaking to me and like all the like do you know when you kind of the light bulb goes off and it's lovely, but then like a bigger light bulb goes off, and then it kind of goes more into like almost self paranoia, or like you're noticing the things that you're saying and you're thinking, I do not even want to be saying these words. Like I don't understand what's happening. And in
Okay.
those transitional places, I feel like I've had different light bulb and big light bulb moments. But
Yeah.
yeah, do you have any regulation techniques for someone who's going beyond self-awareness and more into self-paranoia?
Yeah, well, I was going to say to me, self-awareness in itself is very pure, nothing wrong with self-awareness. So it was interesting about having too much self-awareness. Now it's switching into something else. It's switching into almost you observing. Self-awareness is, perhaps we should break down what self-awareness is, I suppose, because you are observing yourself, aren't you? You are making a note of what you do. But what you've described is almost becoming, might be, in other words, self-conscious, too self-conscious. So you're actually now very worried about how you're behaving, and you're trying to second guess what your behavior should be. Did I do that properly? Did I say that properly? Us having this conversation, me saying, oh my God, I keep on touching my glasses. Oh my God, I keep on touching my face. And just by thinking that, oh my God, I keep on doing that. Now I go to touch my face and suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing it again. So you're quite right. Over something going on there. But really, I think, as you said, learning to be okay with yourself means that you're not overthinking the negative things about yourself. Because I think there's that inner critic always there. Call it the devil and the angel on your shoulder, but the critic has always got something to say. And it's always about saying, are you sure you said that properly, Joy? I wasn't too happy about that answer, Joy. It's got this inner dialogue. Even as I'm talking to you, it could be trying to undo all the good stuff that I'm doing. So the question would be, how do I keep going? I actually know that it's not real. I know it's got an agenda just to try and keep me safe. So it's tapping into this thing about survival mechanism. I'm now feeling frightened. I'm now feeling scared. Are any of those feelings coming into the room? You can spot them right away by the thinking, by the thoughts. So you say, oh, right, I think I'm sensing a little bit of fear or worry or concern or, as you said, paranoia here. So they're not happy feelings, are they?
Mm.
Definitely not happy feelings, those. So you're thinking, you begin to work out, okay, so what's that all about? And I would say that, without you being necessarily conscious of it, some fear has been triggered within you on a very basic animal level, which makes us want to run or hide or fight. Fight and flight, these instincts, they kick in very quickly. And that happens when we start to feel anxious. And anxiety tends to be about worrying about the future and having lots of thoughts in the future about what's happening right now. So my thoughts in the future, anxiety of me and you talking, would be, I wonder what Tegan's going to ask me next. Oh my God, I bet I won't be able to answer it. How stupid I'm going to look if I cannot answer this question. So I'm not present. I'm over in my I call it my time machine, in the future, trying to fix the future.
Yeah.
In the now, me and you now, trying to fix the future. So I'm not paying attention to you. I'm just stuck in my head. So for me, the paranoia and the over self-awareness, I think I would say there's a lot of second guessing and a lot of predictive thinking that's happening. And that's why the world has suddenly changed. What exactly are you predicting? What's making you feel anxious, or what's triggered your stress response? That's where I would think it was coming from, Tegan. I hope that helps.
It does help. Yeah, like what's triggered your stress response, I think really helps. And actually understanding um kind of the outcomes, like the potential outcomes that could happen, and realizing that none of them are actually a threat, I think is when, and you do that enough, I think you can then just really just chill out and be, like you said, be present rather than stressing secretly.
Absolutely. And you're right about looking at the different outcomes. Like, you could sit here and write a book about the future. We could actually now, on this interview, just decide that once we leave this, then this is going to happen, then that's going to happen, and then this is going to happen. And then, you catch me like 2 days later, me and you've got this long list. We could compare notes if we wanted to. But really and truly, what a waste of 2 days that was, for starters. But also, did any of them come true? So if you do have that divine power of prediction and you're very accurate, what I normally say to clients is that go on television and make lots of money from it.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah, if you're really that good at it. And I'm not even belittling people that can perhaps see a bit into the future. I mean, clairvoyance, etc., they do exist, and I have used them. I've used them. Exactly, Tegan. Yeah, I agree with you.
Gorgeous. So in terms of, can we have like one, I think a really nice finishing question. And this again was on your LinkedIn description, I believe. Asking and kind of like operating from survival versus from like self-worth and like a
Mm,
heightened sense of self-worth. Say, we're right back at the beginning. We know what we want to think. We know what we want to be feeling in our daily experience. To me, I think that is like your self-worth. It's who you deserve to be. That's what you are worthy of experiencing because you've decided that that's what you want. Yeah, we're operating from a survival mode most times. How do you think we can bridge that gap and stop masking like this person and actually become that person?
Yes,
Very big
yes.
question.
It's a
So
very big question, Tegan, but I'll try. I'm making sense of it, so that's fine. A couple of things in there. So, what is self-worth and what is self-esteem? So, everyone gets it muddled up, okay? You're not the only one. Takes me a while to like get back to like remembering what is the difference between these two words because they are interchangeably used, aren't they? People think self-worth is the same as self-esteem, but they're not the same thing. That's an interesting one. Okay. And then the other part was then how can you stop yourself from, was it possibly pretending to be something that you're not? You mentioned the word masks or wearing masks.
yeah, like how do you mask instead of like somebody being in survival mode, but they're smiling versus somebody who's like smiling just because they
And
like
it's real.
be at peace. Yeah, and they're alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the person that's like I could be smiling behind, put on a brave face, but really feeling quite crappy inside because I have to go on and do something. But I think internally, I know that there's something else going on for me. And there's other feelings at at bay, whether it's worry, as I said, or fear. Fear is the biggest one that's always just lurking around the corner because it triggers the stress response really quickly. So we can all put on a brave face. Now, obviously, people on the outside can be tricked by a smile. A smile. Tegan thinks I'm okay. She doesn't know I'm dying inside, does she? There's a lot of like, she doesn't know I'm dying inside, does she? And as soon as I leave you, suddenly my face falls and I might cry or something, or I might just fall into a slump or have a drink or whatever it is I think that's going to make you think, oh, thank God I got through that. So, yeah, the only person that you probably are doing the worst harm to is yourself. And the feelings, what a good feeling is and a bad feeling is. So that's one thing. You also know when your smile is genuine and it's coming from a good place and you're not thinking or overthinking. All right. So going back to how you feel about you, because you're quite right, the situation could make you feel bad about yourself or feel good about yourself. You've got to have a very solid sense of who you are. Now, I'm not saying that's an easy thing, but when we're born, we have, let's say, 100% self-worth. It's a thing, it's untouchable, you can't break it, you can't make it, you can't whatever. All right. So the self-worth is never questionable. It's like, you were a valuable baby, Tegan. So was I. I was a valuable baby too, and I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. Okay? Now, life experiences chip away at that self-worth. Okay? But it hasn't really changed the solid nature of this diamond. What it has done is almost created a secondary diamond, which isn't the real thing. So we're talking about now how I see myself because other people see me in that way. So it's called your self-esteem, your self-estimation, how you value yourself. It's very different to the real solid diamond that we know we are, but we move so far away from it because we're trying to please other people. So we end up with a view of ourselves. So self-esteem is fragile. Self-worth is not. Self-worth is the diamond that you always were, Tegan, and me. We haven't lost it. It's there. We just don't feel good all of the time because we're operating from it brings in other words like the word ego, which gets very confusing. But let's say there's the baby me and the big me, and the big me has learned a lot of bad habits about who they are, but that's the person that exists in the world. So that person can be knocked back very quickly by life and things and suddenly decide, I'm not good enough because my launch didn't work. I'm not good enough because I can't do this. I'm not good enough because I can't ride a bike anymore. So that's the bit that gets chipped away at. So that's why it's fragile. It comes and it goes. And we put on a mask of being okay. We have to. Otherwise we'd be crying all day, you know? So the self-worth is very interesting, and it's not an easy thing to explain, and I'll have to try again at some point. But just remember that self-worth is constant. It always has been there. From the moment you were born, you were a valuable human being, and you still are. The self-esteem are all the ideas. There's a different list now that you've created, which is what you have to be in order to be deemed to be a good person. and you create that list, and other people add stuff to it too, which is why other people's opinions affect us. Yeah, nice one to think about.
Is. I like that. I'm probably gonna write about that
You
now.
should. I think it's a good one. Don't know where it came from, Tegan, but that was a good one. That was.
Yeah, it was really what I want to end on as well. That is great. I love that. Did you realize any of your own things that you were holding your own self, no, your self-worth, your self-esteem to? But did you have any specific thoughts that you was like, I feel only worthy or self-esteemed when I have X amount of money coming in or, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. For me, there've been lots of markers which are points at which you have to achieve or make the grade. And I think it starts at school. For me personally, it starts at school because that's when I was measured and weighed and had to pass tests and everything else. Otherwise, I wasn't good enough. So the education system for me was my first wake-up call. Are you good enough, Joy? I had to be an A grade student, or I wasn't good enough. So that was my first thing. Obviously, then when you get into the world of work, it's the type of work that you do, you know, which profession is deemed to be better than the other. You know, apparently being a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever, they're the jobs that you're meant to have because they make you feel people will like those. But being I don't know, working in Tesco's or being, you know, cleaning the roads or streets or, you know, working at McDonald's, which people can rise to high levels in McDonald's, but it's how people perceive it.
Yeah.
So these have been the measures that have knocked me back. My personal ones have been around the educational system, having qualifications, having to, considering myself not good enough, not worthy enough, unless I have bits of paper to prove it. And then more recently in business, you're quite right. Goals, the financial goals. Are you making the right amount of money? Are some of the products you're putting out there, are they valuable? Are people even communicating with you? What other measures can I put down? Oh, social media. Am I being visible enough? Am I able to talk on camera? Am I, you know, there's a lot of am I, you know, like, you know, before you know it, you just want to hide in a corner. So these are all the pressures that you put on yourself, but also that other people can put on you. So you have to decide which ones you're going to own. I don't care if Tegan doesn't like the fact that I'm wearing my lovely zebra top today. I think I can withstand it if she says, Jill, I hate that. I can just say,
FYI, I
Tegan,
love it, by the way.
I
Just
can
to
say, Tegan, thank you so much. I can say, Tegan, it doesn't matter if you don't like it. That's fine.
let
But I know in the past, if someone had said something to me like that, I possibly would never have worn that top again.
Mm,
Hmm. You felt that as a woman. You know that feeling, don't you?
100%. 100%.
Percent. Yeah, 300%. Like, oh, especially that question about what are you wearing today? Oh, what's that you're wearing? Like, you know, the kind of like the doubt
Uh-huh.
just eats away at your confidence.
Well, it's a dress. So
It's a dress. That's right. That's right. So, you know, you wanted to say with the who's answering, the self-esteemed joy or the self-worthy joy, you know, which one's answering? Because the worthy part of me will say, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
That's,
literally.
yeah, it's okay what you think, Tegan. You're me, you're you, I'm me. That's fine. You know, and I genuinely feel that. But the one with all the pressures and the long list of who I have to be would say, oh my God, which number have I just broken? My God. Oh, the one about dressing well. God. The one about wearing the tops with tiger stripes. Oh God. Now I know what not to do next time. Cross that off my list. Don't ever wear a tiger skin top again. Whoosh. I feel so much better now. I know what the rules are. I think I can go out into the world and be okay.
Wow.
Until the next time.
And it's like, why have you got orange beads on or something? You know, why have you got pink nail varnish? And it's like, okay, yeah, I love that. I love how you reiterated that in your brain as like your brain's processing to cross out, and that's like a rule that you cross out, and then you feel safe because you know what to do. I've never ever had a thought like that before, and I really enjoyed that. So thank you for that wisdom because, yeah, that's exceptional. And it's funny, I wonder how many things I have in my mind that I've crossed off and I don't even realize that I have.
Good
I wonder,
question,
I wonder.
Tegan. Good question. I think that's why the self-awareness and the self-growth never stops. There's always something else to unearth
Yeah,
because
there's
other people are the teachers, aren't they? You know, other people are the mirror, really, because we can't see who we are. So we've relied on other people to be truthful about what they can see. But we don't always realize they've got their own stuff going on. And sometimes they're just in really bad moods, you know, like, so today you'd probably say, Joy, I love that nail varnish. I say, oh, good, I'm going to wear some tomorrow. The next day I see you, Joy, what the kind of nail varnish is that? I'm thinking, but yesterday you said you loved it. So who am I now? Who's the person that's controlling me? Am I able to control my own world, or is Tegan in control of my world?
nice. Love that. I love that a lot. Well, Joy, thank you so much. What a great afternoon. And yeah, I think I'm going to be thinking for the rest of the week now about what we've spoken about today. Yes, brilliant. I hope you have a gorgeous evening and thank you so much for coming on.
And Tegan, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a great conversation. You're a very lively person, so you're very easy to talk to.
Well, thank you. I felt like you were ever so grounded, and it was nice to just actually talk about our own experiences with so much softness and like I,
TLC,
yeah,
TLC,
UPSC
Tegan.
formula. I want to know more about that. Do you have a program? Is it like coming out as like a program?
Yes, I've got a 6-week program coming out. So I've got one starting in June and there'll be more. But really, it's to take women. I'm focusing on women in business and in particular solopreneurs because I think the challenges are a little bit different. But again, some of the aspects that we've touched on around what makes you worthy and, you know, do you consider yourself to be a good businesswoman and a bad one? You know, how does anxiety affect you? How does that overwhelm affect you? Really, being in business is not an easy thing. So, how are you being? How can you get back to being just confidently doing what you do and having that place of peace and calm while you're doing it? But confidence is the big thing, and the self-awareness is the next thing. And business is hopefully going to be a forever thing for you. But you're quite right. Whatever service or product you have, it's kind of irrelevant as long as you manage your own business world and then your personal world because the two go.
Well, it's just within you, isn't it? Like whatever's happening, it's gonna be with you nonstop. It's not like you can just chop off some hair and those emotions have disappeared in the bin, into a landfill forever. Um, it's with you. But I think, even as when you was mentioning about your experience, I think that's a beautiful thing about starting your own business is that you can take that time off and you can be around your family. The negative side is when you go back and you feel like you're ready to go back, I think it's much more overwhelming because if you're in a workplace, you go back and nothing had changed. And that whole consistency and routine, people, systems, it's all still there. Whereas when you go back to your business, you've changed so much that I think that's the downfall. But
That's the
yes,
beauty of it, Tegan, as well. We'll talk about that another time, but yes,
yeah, the beauty
yes.
of it. Yeah, I love that. Okay. Thank you so much. We're going to end up talking forever. So I'll love and leave you now. But Joy, it's
My
been an absolute
pleasure.
pleasure.
My
Thank you.
pleasure, Tegan.